Hey, welcome to Agnes Thompson's channel. My name's Carol, and I'm going to share my story with you.
The morning fog in Oregon isn't just weather, it's a promise. It clings to the petals of my hydrangeas, giving them a pearly sheen, and settles on the old cedar bench that Richard built 30 years ago. Every morning, I come out here with my cup of Mr. Coffee, breathe in the damp smell of the earth, and run my hand over the bench's rough, weathered wood. It's my ritual. A connection to him. Richard always said that a garden isn't about flowers, but about patience. You can't force a rose to bloom faster, Carol, he'd say, wiping the sweat from his brow. You can only give it everything it needs and have faith. I'm 64. A widow for 3 years now and retired for 2. For 40 years, I was the head librarian at the county library here in Portland. My universe was card catalogs, the scent of old books, and the quiet rustle of turning pages. I built systems, found connections, and believed in verifiable facts and primary sources. My life, much like the retirement fund Richard and I built, was based on the principle of slow, steady growth. Brick by brick. Dollar by dollar. No sudden sprints, no risky gambles. Our house is paid off. Our savings, managed by Bank of America, were calculated to last us through a quiet, modest old age. Enough to cover the rising costs of our Medicare supplement, property taxes, and maybe a trip to the coast once a year. This predictability was my comfort, my quiet harbor. The buzz of my phone on the kitchen counter shatters the peace. I jump. In the silence of my house, any sound seems deafening. The screen lights up with a notification from the Parker Family Hub group chat. I put on my reading glasses. My daughter, Sarah, has sent a picture of my grandson, Leo. He's standing in front of some trendy food truck with a coffee in his hand, flashing a brilliant smile. The caption reads, "Our future millionaire fueling up for a big day." I smile at his face, but the rocket emoji leaves me slightly bewildered. Our family chats are a kaleidoscope of rapid-fire messages, gifts I don't always understand, and plans that change 3 times a day. It's their world, fast, digital, ephemeral. I type slowly with one finger. What a handsome young man. Tell him his grandma loves him. Sarah's reply comes 5 seconds later, smiley heart. And that's it. Conversation over. I know she loves me. But her love, like her messages, always feels a bit rushed, sent on the run between a Zoom meeting and a trip to Whole Foods. They live at a rhythm I can no longer want to keep up with. I am an analog woman in a digital world, and the gap feels wider every day. Last week, I tried to build a bridge across that divide. While cleaning out Richard's desk drawers, I found something I thought was long lost. A small cardboard folder, and inside, our very first stock certificate. A single share of Procter & Gamble, purchased in 1985. I remember that day. Richard and I sat at this very kitchen table, he a young engineer, and I a budding librarian. We had spent weeks studying annual reports at the library, reading the papers, debating. Buying that one share was a momentous occasion for us. It was the tangible embodiment of our faith in the future, in hard work, in patience. Over 40 years, through dividends and reinvestment, that single share had grown into a modest but pleasing asset. I decided it was the perfect lesson for Leo. He had just finished college, was talking about a career, about the future. On Sunday, when they came for dinner, I brought out the folder. The certificate was printed on heavy, ornate paper with watermarks and a flourishing signature. "Leo, I want to show you something," I began, feeling a sense of ceremony rise in me. "This isn't just a piece of paper. It's a story. A story about how a small but well-researched decision, made long ago, can bear fruit for a lifetime. Your grandfather and I weren't chasing fast money. We believed in something you could touch, something real." I wanted to tell him about the magic of compound interest, the importance of fundamental analysis, that true wealth is time and patience. Leo took the certificate. He turned it over in his hands as if studying an artifact from a lost civilization. "Whoa, cool," he said, his voice lacking any of the reverence I had hoped for. "An actual piece of paper. That's so sweet, Grandma." Sweet. The word hit me like a slap in the face. Nobody does it this way anymore, he continued, handing it back to me. It's all in the cloud. Why wait 40 years when you can get results in a month? My son-in-law, Tom, chuckled into his casserole. Boomer economics, he said good-naturedly. Buy and hold. Leo and I are looking into much more progressive strategies these days. Sarah immediately intervened, sensing the tension. Dad, he didn't mean it like that. Leo, thank your grandmother for sharing. That's very precious. But it was too late. My carefully prepared lesson, my piece of family history, my wisdom, had been dismissed with a single word. They looked at me with love, yes, but it was the love one has for a museum exhibit. Something old, touching, but utterly irrelevant in their shiny new world. I silently put the folder away. That evening, after they left, I sat in the silence for a long time, the feeling of loneliness, almost a physical presence. They hadn't just misunderstood me, they hadn't even tried. That conversation made me think about money more than I usually did. I'm not one to check my balance daily. Richard's and my strategy was built on the set it and forget it principle. But Tom's words about progressive strategies had planted a seed of anxiety. I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. The numbers on the screen were familiar, comforting. A retirement fund managed by Vanguard. A conservative portfolio, 60% bonds, 40% blue-chip stocks. Solid as a rock. But inflation. I saw the prices climbing at Safeway, saw how much my last electricity bill had increased. My fixed income no longer felt like an unbreachable fortress. I clicked on the tab for my healthcare expenses. The Medicare Plan G supplement, the Part D prescription drug plan, the copays for specialists. The numbers were slowly but surely eating away at my budget. I had always been confident we had planned for everything. But what if it wasn't enough? What if, in 10 years, my quiet harbor turned into a struggle for survival? For the first time in years, I felt a stab of fear. Fear of a future I couldn't control. And in that state of vulnerability, I was willing to listen. Even to things I would have previously dismissed as utter nonsense. In the weeks that followed, Tom and Leo began to mention their new mentor more often. Some exotic name, Cairo. He was, in their words, a financial visionary, a genius of digital assets. They were constantly forwarding short, motivational clips of this Cairo to the family chat. A young, tan man in an expensive suit would speak against a backdrop of panoramic windows overlooking Dubai or Singapore. He talked about breaking free from the chains of the old financial system, about a decentralized future, and a quantum leap to wealth. His speech was full of terms I didn't understand: blockchain, NFTs, altcoins, staking. My inner librarian was screaming, "Where are the sources? Where are the independent audits? Where is his certified track record?" But another part of me, the grandmother who saw the light in her grandson's eyes, wanted to understand them. For the first time in a long time, Leo was passionate about something. He and Tom would spend their evenings on their computers, looking at charts, discussing signals and entry points. They were speaking the same language, and I desperately wanted to be a part of their world. I wanted them to look at me and see an ally, not a relic. Last Tuesday night, as I was getting ready for bed, the phone buzzed again. A message in the Parker family hub. This time from Tom. It was long. Unusually long for him. Carol, Sarah, Leo. I have amazing news. Cairo is opening up access to his elite trading pool. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He uses a unique algorithm to trade crypto, and the returns are insane. There are very few spots, and he's only giving them to the most trusted people in his inner circle. Leo and I have already put in all of our savings. I felt a coldness spread through my chest. I read on, the letters starting to blur. Carol, Sarah, and I were talking, and we thought, your retirement fund at Vanguard, it's just sitting there, getting eaten by inflation. It's dead money. If we move a significant portion of those funds into Cairo's pool, we could not just secure your retirement, we could supercharge it. Create a real legacy for Leo. This is our chance. A chance for the whole family to get ahead. We need to decide by tomorrow morning. I can arrange everything, I just need your power of attorney to manage the account. I sat in the total silence of my home, staring at the phone screen. The words power of attorney, retirement fund, crypto, and once in a lifetime swirled in my head into a toxic cocktail. This was the money Richard and I had earned over 40 years. It was our security, our past, and my future. And my son-in-law, my daughter's husband, was asking me to hand it all over to a stranger from the internet named Cairo. He was asking me to trade my quiet harbor for the promise of a digital storm. The night after Tom's message was like a slow drowning. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling where shadows from the street lamp danced. Every word from his message was branded in my mind. Power of attorney. Elite pool. A once-in-a-lifetime chance. The silence in the house was crushing. I had always loved the silence, but now it felt ominous, filled with unspoken risks. I got up, went to the kitchen, drank some water. I turned on my laptop, opened the Vanguard page, and looked at the smooth, stable line of our savings growth. It was the line of our entire life. 40 years of discipline, patience, and modesty. And now my son-in-law, my own son-in-law, was asking me to bet it all on a digital roulette wheel. My mind screamed, no. The librarian in me demanded proof, reports, independent audits. But my heart ached with something else. It saw the fire in Leo's eyes, heard Tom's desperate desire to get ahead, felt the chasm between me and my family. Maybe this was the bridge I was looking for? Maybe this act of trust wasn't a financial decision, but an emotional one? To show them I believed in them, that I was willing to step into their world, even if it terrified me. By morning, exhausted and hollowed out, I made a decision. Not with my mind, with my heart. I chose my family. I called Tom. His voice was bright and full of enthusiasm. He walked me through the procedure on DocuSign. I, a woman who still wrote checks, was placing my digital signature on a document that handed over control of my life's work. Each click of the mouse was a dull thud in my chest. I closed the laptop and felt my quiet harbor shudder as the first wave from a strange, incomprehensible ocean washed in. The first 2 weeks were like a honeymoon. The family chat came alive with a new energy. Tom and Leo sent screenshots almost daily. Green numbers, upward-pointing arrows, growth percentages that made my head spin, plus 8%, plus 15%, plus 12%. This is just the beginning, Carol. Tom wrote. Cairo is a genius. Leo sent emojis of money with wings and rockets. I looked at these pictures and a part of me, that frightened grandmother, timidly rejoiced. What if they were right? What if my skepticism was just old age, an inability to accept the new? I even began to feel a little thrill. Sarah called, her voice ringing with happiness. Mom, Tom says we might be able to go to Hawaii for Christmas. All of us. Can you imagine? I could imagine. And the picture was so tempting, so warm, that I pushed away the quiet, whispering voice of doubt in the back of my mind. I even started asking Tom questions, trying to learn their language. What's a bull market? What's the difference between Ethereum and Bitcoin? They explained, condescendingly but gladly. I felt like part of their team. The first crack appeared quietly. As a former librarian, I'm used to order. Once a month, I've always printed out my bank statements and filed them in a binder. It was my ritual of control. I asked Tom to send me an official statement from this elite pool, just for my records. Of course, Carol, he replied. But he sent nothing. A week later, I reminded him. The response was different this time. Mom, it's all very complicated. It's not like a regular bank account. The platform is super advanced. You wouldn't understand it anyway. The main thing is the result, and it's there. His tone was friendly, but I caught a note of irritation. The screenshots in the family chat became less frequent. To my question, how are things in the pool? Leo replied with a single word, fine. And then, silence fell. The kind of deafening silence that comes before a storm. The green numbers vanished. So did the rocket emojis. My whisper of doubt had become a deafening scream of alarm. The collapse came on a Thursday. A phone call from Sarah. She wasn't crying. Her voice was quiet and lifeless, which was more terrifying than any sob. Mom, I can't reach Tom. He's really down. Something happened with the money. And she hung up. I immediately dialed Tom's number. Voicemail. Leo. Voicemail. The family chat was dead. A cold, sticky fear began to rise from my stomach to my throat. I couldn't stand the uncertainty any longer. I called the one place I trusted, my longtime contact at Bank of America. My only anchor in the storm. I spoke to a polite young man named David, whom I'd dealt with before. Trying to keep my voice from trembling, I explained the situation. A large sum had been transferred via a power of attorney, and I just wanted to confirm that it was in a secure transit account or somewhere the bank could trace it. There was a pause. I could hear only the soft clicking of his keyboard. "Mrs. Parker," David finally said, his voice extremely cautious and professional. "I see the transaction. The funds from your investment account were fully withdrawn 2 weeks ago. As per the instructions received via the POA, they were transferred to an account at," he paused again, "an offshore bank in the Cayman Islands. From there, on the same day, they were sent in several parts to multiple cryptocurrency exchanges. From the moment the money left our system, we can no longer track it. For us, it's untraceable. Untraceable." The word didn't just sound, it exploded in my head, destroying everything. I don't remember how I ended the call. I think I just dropped the receiver back into its cradle. I sat at the kitchen table and stared out the window at my garden. But I didn't see the roses or the hydrangeas. I saw 40 years of life turn to dust. 40 years of Richard's hard work, his overtime at the plant, his tired but happy eyes when we finally paid off the mortgage. All of it had been erased with a few clicks of a mouse. This wasn't just a robbery. It was the desecration of a memory. Later that day, Sarah came over. Her eyes were red, her face swollen. She tried to defend Tom. "He didn't mean to, Mom. He was scammed too. This Cairo guy, he vanished. The website is down, the group is deleted. Tom lost everything. He's crushed." I looked at my daughter and felt nothing. Not pity, not anger. Just a cold, hollow emptiness. My family, my home, my quiet harbor, it was all a house of cards. I had never in my life felt so old, so foolish, and so utterly, completely alone. I spent several days in a fog. I mechanically watered the flowers, brewed coffee I didn't drink, stared at the wall. The grief was physical. It drained my strength, my will, my desire to breathe. And then one morning, sitting on Richard's bench, I looked at the old rose bush. It had survived 2 droughts, an aphid infestation, and one particularly harsh winter. And still, it stood there, thorny, stubborn, pushing out new buds. In that moment, something inside me shifted. The emptiness began to fill. Not with grief. With something else. Something hard, cold, and sharp. Anger. Not a hysterical anger, but a quiet, focused rage. The librarian in me, whom I had buried under the rubble of my sorrow, lifted her head. The fraud was digital, but it left traces. There are always traces. I remembered everything, every message, every boastful screenshot, every promise. They thought they had deceived an old woman. They had overlooked one thing: old women have a phenomenal memory for details. And 40 years of experience in systemizing information. My morning wasn't the end. It was the preface. My transformation began with the purchase of a new, hardcover notebook and a pack of Pilot G2 pens. I sat down at the kitchen table and turned it into my command center. First, I opened the family chat and, methodically scrolling back to the very beginning, started taking screenshots of every single message from Tom and Leo regarding Cairo and the investment. Every promise, every figure, every screenshot of profits. Then I printed them all on my old HP printer. The result was a hefty stack of paper. These were my card catalogs. My evidence. Next, the library. I spent hours at their computers, using their high-speed internet, and plunged into the world that had robbed me. I read everything. About crypto scams like the rug pull, about how to trace transactions on the blockchain, about the fraud departments at banks and the FBI. I wrote down terms, diagrams, precedents. Then I called Bank of America again, asking for David. But this time, there was no panic in my voice. "David," I said calmly and clearly, "I'm calling about case number 743. I've compiled an initial package of documents. I have the exact dates of all communications, screenshots of promised returns, and most importantly, several screenshots from the early stages that show the crypto wallet addresses where the first sums were sent. I want you to assign me a dedicated case manager from the fraud department. I am ready to cooperate. 2 days later, a man from the bank's financial crimes division called me. His name was Mr. Chen. His voice was weary and professional. He listened to my story without comment. I expected skepticism, condescension. But when I listed the documents I had in my possession, his tone changed. "Send me everything you have, Mrs. Parker," he said. "Especially the screenshots with the wallet addresses. You understand that in 99% of cases like this, the money is impossible to recover?" "I understand," I replied. "But I also understand that in 100% of cases, it's impossible to recover if you do nothing." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then he said something I didn't expect. "The transaction addresses you've given me, they're digital fingerprints. They're a trail. A very faint one, almost wiped clean, but it's a starting point. We can try to follow the funds." I looked at the stack of printed papers on my table. At the face of the smiling Cairo on one of the sheets. They thought I was just an old woman, easy to fool. They discounted my experience, my meticulousness, my memory. They took Richard's money. But they left me with something more important, a reason to fight. Even when it seemed all was lost, I did not give up. My first official conversation with Mr. Chen from Bank of America's Financial Crimes Division felt like a visit to a doctor about to deliver bad news. He was professional, polite, and offered absolutely no hope. We spoke over a secure video call, his face impassive on my laptop screen, a sterile office interior visible behind him. I had turned my living room into a war room. The stack of my printouts lay on the table, neatly sorted by date. "Mrs. Parker, I have to be completely honest with you," he began, looking directly into the camera. "The sum we're talking about is enormous. The method of withdrawal was classic. The money was funneled through several offshore accounts, then atomized across dozens of cryptocurrency exchanges, and most likely run through what are called mixers. These are services that blend stolen funds with thousands of other transactions to make tracing virtually impossible. Imagine someone tossed a handful of your sand onto a beach. The odds of finding your specific grains, they're astronomically small." I listened silently, not interrupting. I had expected this. I had spent the last few days researching these exact terms. Mixers. Atomization. I knew he was telling the truth. "But you said the wallet addresses were a trail," I reminded him, my voice even, without a hint of despair. "It's a trail that leads to the beach, Mrs. Parker. It doesn't point to the specific grains of sand," he sighed. "We have a team that will look into it. They'll begin the work. But I can't promise you anything. This could take months, even years, and will most likely lead nowhere." "I understand," I said. "I've sent you an encrypted file. The password is my late husband's name, Richard, with a capital R. Inside, you'll find everything I've gathered. Not just the family chat screenshots. I've spent the last 72 hours at the public library. I've analyzed every video of this, Cairo. I've taken screenshots of every frame where details of the interior, reflections in the windows, or brands on his clothing were visible. I've run his voice through several free speech analysis programs to determine a possible accent. I've compiled a list of every term he used and cross-referenced them with the lexicon of other known fraud schemes. It's all in folders, sorted by category. It might be garbage, but it's all I have." For the first time, something like surprise flickered across Mr. Chen's face. He glanced down for a moment, obviously opening my file. Silence fell, broken only by the clicking of his keyboard. "Mrs. Parker," he said at last, slowly raising his eyes. This isn't garbage. This is the most detailed victim-provided dossier I have seen in my entire career." In that moment, I knew I had an ally. He might still not believe in success, but he was starting to believe in me. Our hunt had begun. My days fell into a routine that would have been achingly familiar to me 30 years ago, were it not for the subject matter. In the morning, coffee and a walk through the garden, a chat with Richard's roses. And then, 8 hours at the computer. I became a digital archaeologist, sifting through tons of informational refuse for tiny flecks of gold. Mr. Chen and his team were working on their level, trying to untangle the knot of transactions. I was working on mine, the human level. I operated from a simple premise: a con man, no matter how brilliant, is a human being. And humans make mistakes. They are lazy, they are vain, and they leave traces. I focused on the weakest link, my grandson, Leo. Not on what he said, but on what he'd shown me. I spent hours studying those first, boastful screenshots he had sent to the chat. I enlarged them until the image dissolved into pixels. And there, on one of them, obviously taken late at night, I saw it. In the reflection of his glossy monitor, in the very corner, barely discernible, was a sliver of another window open behind the trading platform. It was a gaming forum. I could make out part of a username, Iptolord88. My heart began to beat faster. It was a mistake. A stupid, boyish mistake. Leo, taking a screenshot of his profits to show off to his family, had forgotten to close his gaming tab. I began to methodically check this username on all the popular gaming platforms: Steam, Twitch, Discord. And I found him. An account on Discord belonging to CryptoLord88. The avatar was some cartoon rocket. I joined a server he was on. It was a huge community dedicated to an online game. Thousands of messages a day. I used the search function by user. And I began to read everything CryptoLord88 had ever written. Most of it was gaming slang. But sometimes, in the general chats, he would brag. He wrote about his mentor who was teaching him to print money. He mentioned Cairo. And once, in response to another player's question about where he got the money for expensive in-game items, he wrote, "My mentor is a real wizard. He even has his own clothing brand, LOL." And he attached a link. The link led to a long-abandoned website built on a free platform. It sold t-shirts and caps with cringy crypto memes and a logo I had seen before. That logo, tiny and blurry, was in the corner of all of Cairo's inspirational videos. It was the second thread. Vanity. The con man couldn't resist creating merch. I sent all the information to Mr. Chen. His reply came in 10 minutes. "We're on it." The entrance of FBI Special Agent Kimberly Reyes into my life was unexpected. She called me on my landline. "Mrs. Parker, my name is Agent Reyes. Mr. Chen at Bank of America shared your case with us. We'd like to speak with you." Her voice was young but firm. We met in a nondescript coffee shop in downtown Portland. She was my complete opposite, tall, in a severe pantsuit, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. She watched me with polite curiosity, and I could see the question in her eyes that everyone must have been asking. What is this sweet old lady doing in the middle of a major cybercrime investigation? I laid my notebook on the table between us. "Agent Reyes," I began, "I know you probably see me as just another victim. But I was a librarian for 40 years. My job is to find connections where others don't see them." I told her about the username, about the abandoned t-shirt website. She listened intently, without interrupting. "The information about the website allowed us to get a name," she said when I finished. "The domain owner is a Kevin Lee, with an address in Miami, Florida. But it could be a front." "It's not a front," I said. "In one of Cairo's videos, I noticed a flower in a window's reflection. It's a specific variety of hibiscus, eye of the devil. It's very popular in Florida, but doesn't thrive in other climates." And on his wrist in another video, there was a watch. Not a Rolex, nothing flashy. An old, worn Seiko. But it's a rare diver's model. I found a post on a watchmaker's forum from 5 years ago by a user named Kevly_Diver from Miami who was looking for a strap for that exact watch. He attached a photo. The same watch was on his wrist. And the same mole on his wrist that Cairo has. Agent Reyes blinked slowly. She took out her own notebook and began to write. "Mrs. Parker," she said, looking up at me, her eyes no longer filled with curiosity, but with pure, unadulterated respect. "Have you ever considered a career change?" That same evening, I had to have the hardest conversation. I drove to Sarah's. Tom was there. He had lost weight, his face was gaunt, and his former confidence was gone. He sat on the sofa, staring at the floor. Tom, I said quietly. I need your help. I need access to your computer. To the complete history of your chats with Kevin Lee. Mom, don't. Sarah intervened. He's going through enough. He lost everything. He lost my money, I cut in, looking directly at Tom. The money your father-in-law earned his entire life. I'm not asking. I'm demanding. Either you help me, or I give Agent Reyes our entire family chat history, where you convince me to give you power of attorney. And then this won't just be fraud. It will be conspiracy. It was a cruel blow. I saw Sarah's face crumble. But I had to do it. Tom slowly lifted his head. There were tears in his eyes. I'll give you everything, he whispered. Everything I have. The culmination was quiet and digital, but no less tense for it. I was sitting in my kitchen, a secure chat window open on my laptop. Inside were me, Mr. Chin, and Agent Reyes. They were calling it Operation Paper Trail. Using Tom's complete chat history, they had gained access to the elite pool's internal chat. They saw the investors' panic, the false, soothing messages from Cairo and his associates. And they saw his plan. Kevin Lee was about to conduct one last operation, consolidate all the remaining funds from dozens of small wallets into one large one, then run it through a mixer one last time and disappear forever. He's making his move, Reyes wrote in the chat. We see the funds flowing to the main wallet. I stared at my screen, but I didn't see numbers. I saw the life savings of hundreds of people just like me. Teachers, firefighters, retirees. People who had believed in a dream of easy money. The amount in the target wallet has reached $20 million, Chin reported. A little longer, Reyes wrote. We need him to consolidate as much as possible. The court order to freeze the assets is ready. We're waiting for the peak. My fingers went cold. I gripped the edge of the table. This was the moment of truth. Decades of my life, months of my painstaking work, all came down to this instant. 32 million, Chin wrote. Looks like that's it. Give the order. Freeze it. Came the message from Reyes. Silence. A minute stretched into an eternity. I held my breath. And then a message from Chin. One word. Got it. Followed by one from Reyes. He's trapped. The money is frozen. The arrest team is entering his house in Miami. Congratulations, Mrs. Parker. We got him. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. Just an endless, all-consuming exhaustion. The storm was over. The next day, I saw his face on the news. Kevin Lee. No expensive suits or panoramic windows. Just an ordinary guy in his mid-30s, in a t-shirt and shorts, being led out of a regular suburban house by two FBI agents. He looked confused and scared. Not a genius. Not a visionary. Just a thief. His trading group was exposed as a massive fraud scheme that had affected over 200 families across the country. The total damages exceeded $50 million. My name was never mentioned. I was just an anonymous source. And that suited me perfectly. The process of getting the money back, as Chin had warned, was long and arduous. Lawyers, depositions, paperwork. It took almost a year before the first portion of the funds was returned to my account. Not all of it. About 70%. The rest had vanished into exchange fees, legal bills, and thin air. But it was enough. The house was safe. My quiet harbor had held. Tom came to see me alone. Without Sarah. He brought his laptop. I want you to see this, Carol, he said. I want you to understand how deep the rabbit hole went. He opened files he hadn't shown me before. They were his private chats with Kevin. Hours of psychological manipulation. Kevin hadn't just promised money. He had played on Tom's insecurities, his fear of not being successful enough, his desire to give his family the very best. He had become not just a mentor, but almost a father figure to him. He made me believe I was one of the chosen ones, Tom whispered, staring at the screen. That everyone else was a sheep, and we were the wolves. I was such an idiot. He scrolled silently through the files. And then he stopped. This, he said, pointing to a folder labeled Phase 2. He sent this a week before the crash. Said it was for those ready for the real game. I never even opened it. I was already starting to suspect something. I leaned toward the screen. Inside were not charts or promises. They were forms. Extremely detailed questionnaires that investors were supposed to fill out to advance to the next level. Name, date of birth, social security number, mother's maiden name, addresses for the last 10 years, scans of driver's licenses and passports. Everything. The complete kit for identity theft. He wasn't just going to take their money, I whispered, a chill running down my spine. He was going to steal their lives. I immediately called Agent Reyes. She had Tom forward everything to her. Her reply came an hour later. Mrs. Parker. I don't even know what to say. We thought this was just financial fraud. But this would have been a catastrophe. Using this data, Lee and his accomplices could have spent years taking out loans, opening mortgages, destroying the credit of hundreds of people. You didn't just get the money back. You prevented something far, far worse. You saved these people from utter ruin. Your son-in-law, by not opening that folder, may have done the most important thing in his life. I looked at Tom. He was sitting with his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. And in that moment, my anger, which I had carried for so long like a shard of ice, finally melted. All that was left was pain. And a drop of compassion. He wasn't a villain. He was just a man who got lost chasing someone else's dream. And my lesson, the lesson of patience and real value that he had refused to hear a year ago, life had taught him in the cruelest way possible. 2 years have passed. The morning fog still clings to my hydrangeas. I still sit on Richard's bench with my cup of coffee. But something is different. The silence in my house no longer feels frightening. It feels earned. It's the silence after a battle. My relationship with Sarah and Tom is slowly healing. The scar will always be there, but it no longer aches with every touch. They come over every Sunday. Tom found a job with a small construction firm. He works hard and says little. But there's something in his eyes I've never seen before: humility. Leo finished a trade school program and works as an electrician's apprentice. He earns a living with his own 2 hands. Sometimes he sits next to me in the garden, and we watch the roses in silence. We both know that the most important lessons are the quietest ones. I didn't become a hero. My name never appeared in the papers. I remained Carol Parker, a retiree from Portland who loves her garden. But I have changed. I realized that the 40 years I spent among dusty shelves and card catalogs weren't just a job. They were training. Training for my mind, for my attention to detail, for my patience. I learned to see what was hidden. I learned to believe in the power of slow, painstaking work. They thought my world was obsolete. But it turned out that the principles of my world, order, evidence, logic, are timeless. They work in the world of paper books and in the world of digital code. I look down at my hands. They're covered in dirt from the morning's weeding. These are the hands of a woman who knows the value of labor. A woman who faced a storm and did not break. They took Richard's money, but they couldn't take his legacy. His legacy isn't in a bank account. It's in this bench, in these roses, in my ability to tell truth from fiction. My quiet harbor was breached, but I rebuilt it. And now I know a harbor is not a place. It's a state of mind. And my soul, at last, is at peace.